Chapter 19 of the Golden Bough. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Golden Bough by Sir James Frazer. Chapter 19. Chapter 19. Tabooed Acts. 1. Taboos on intercourse with strangers. So much for the primitive conceptions of the soul and the dangers to which it is exposed. These conceptions are not limited to one people or country. With variations of detail, they are found all over the world, and survive, as we have seen, in modern Europe. Beliefs so deep-seated and so widespread must necessarily have contributed to shape the mold in which the early kingship was cast. For if every person was at such pains to save his own soul from the perils which threatened it on so many sides, how much more carefully must he have been guarded, upon whose life hung the welfare and even the existence of the whole people, and whom, therefore, it was the common interest of all to preserve. Therefore, we should expect to find the king's life protected by a system of precautions or safeguards still more numerous and minute than those which in primitive society every man adopts for the safety of his own soul. Now, in point of fact, the life of early kings is regulated, as we have seen and shall see more fully presently, by a very exact code of rules. May we not then conjecture that these rules are, in fact, the very safeguards which we should expect to find adopted for the protection of the king's life? An examination of the rules themselves confirms this conjecture, for from this it appears that some of the rules observed by the kings are identical with those observed by private persons out of regard for the safety of their souls, and even those which seem peculiar to the king, many, if not all, are most readily explained on the hypothesis that they are nothing but safeguards or lifeguards of the king. I will now enumerate some of these royal rules or taboos, offering on each of them such comments and explanations as may serve to set the original intention of the rule in its proper light. As the object of the royal taboos is to isolate the king from all sources of danger, their general effect is to compel him to live in a state of seclusion, more or less complete, according to the number and stringency of the rules he observes. Now, of all the sources of danger, none are more dreaded by the savage than magic and witchcraft, and he suspects all strangers of practicing these black arts. To guard against the baneful influence exerted voluntarily or involuntarily by strangers is therefore an elementary dictate of savage prudence. Hence, before strangers are allowed to enter a district, or at least before they are permitted to mingle freely with the inhabitants, certain ceremonies are often performed by the natives of the country for the purpose of disarming the strangers of their magical powers, of counteracting the baneful influence which is believed to emanate from them, or of disinfecting, so to speak, the tainted atmosphere by which they are supposed to be surrounded. Thus, when the ambassadors sent by Justin II, Emperor of the East, to conclude a peace with the Turks had reached their destination, they were received by shamans, who subjected them to a ceremonial purification for the purpose of exorcising all harmful influence. Having deposited the goods brought by the ambassadors in an open place, these wizards carried burning branches of incense round them, while they rang a bell and beat on a tambourine, snorting and falling into a state of frenzy in their efforts to dispel the powers of evil. Afterwards, they purified the ambassadors themselves by leading them through the flames. In the island of Nanumea, South Pacific, strangers from ships or from other islands were not allowed to communicate with the people until they all, or a few as representatives of the rest, had been taken to each of the 4 temples in the island, and prayers offered that the god would avert any disease or treachery which these strangers might have brought with them. Meat offerings were also laid upon the altars, accompanied by songs and dances in honor of the god. While these ceremonies were going on, all the people, except the priests and their attendants, kept out of sight. Amongst the Ot-Danams of Borneo, it is the custom that strangers entering the territory should pay to the natives a certain sum, which is spent in the sacrifice of buffaloes or pigs to the spirits of the land and water, in order to reconcile them to the presence of the strangers, and to induce them not to withdraw their favor from the people of the country, but to bless the rice harvest, and so forth. The men of a certain district in Borneo, fearing to look upon a European traveler lest he should make them ill, warned their wives and children not to go near him. Those who could not restrain their curiosity killed fowls to appease the evil spirits, and smeared themselves with the blood. "More dreaded," says a traveler in central Borneo, "than the evil spirits of the neighborhood are the evil spirits from a distance which accompany travelers. When a company from the middle Mahakam River visited me along the Blue Kayans in the year 1897, no woman showed herself outside her house without a burning bundle of tle-hiding bark, the stinking smoke of which drives away evil spirits." When Crevaux was traveling in South America, he entered a village of the Apalai Indians. A few moments after his arrival, some of the Indians brought him a number of large black ants, of a species whose bite is painful, fastened on palm leaves. Then all the people of the village, without distinction of age or sex, presented themselves to him, and he had to sting them all with the ants on their faces, thighs, and other parts of their bodies. Sometimes, when he applied the ants too tenderly, they called out, "More, more," and were not satisfied till their skin was thickly studded with tiny swellings, like what might have been produced by whipping them with nettles. The object of this ceremony is made plain by the custom observed in Amboina and Ulias of sprinkling sick people with pungent spices, such as ginger and cloves, chewed fine, in order, by the prickling sensation, to drive away the demon of disease which may be clinging to their persons. In Java, a popular cure for gout or rheumatism is to rub Spanish pepper into the nails of the fingers and toes of the sufferer. The pungency of the pepper is supposed to be too much for the gout or rheumatism, who accordingly departs in haste. So on the Slave Coast, the mother of a sick child sometimes believes that an evil spirit has taken possession of the child's body, and in order to drive him out, she makes small cuts in the body of the little sufferer, and inserts green peppers or spices in the wound, believing that she will thereby hurt the evil spirit and force him to be gone. The poor child naturally screams with pain, but the mother hardens her heart in the belief that the demon is suffering equally. It is probable that the same dread of strangers, rather than any desire to do them honor, is the motive of certain ceremonies which are sometimes observed at their reception, but of which the intention is not directly stated. In the Ong Tong Java Islands, which are inhabited by Polynesians, the priests or sorcerers seem to wield great influence. Their main business is to summon or exorcise spirits for the purpose of averting or dispelling sickness, and of procuring favorable winds, a good catch of fish, and so on. When strangers land on the islands, they are first of all received by the sorcerers, sprinkled with water, anointed with oil, and girt with dried pandanus leaves. At the same time, sand and water are freely thrown about in all directions, and the newcomer and his boat are wiped with green leaves. After this ceremony, the strangers are introduced by the sorcerers to the chief. In Afghanistan, and in some parts of Persia, the traveler, before he enters a village, is frequently received with the sacrifice of animal life or food, or of fire and incense. The Afghan boundary mission, in passing by villages in Afghanistan, was often met with fire and incense. Sometimes a tray of lighted embers is thrown under the hoofs of the traveler's horse with the words, "You are welcome." On entering a village in Central Africa, Emin Pasha was received with the sacrifice of 2 goats. Their blood was sprinkled on the path, and the chief stepped over the blood to greet Emin. Sometimes the dread of strangers and their magic is too great to allow of their reception on any terms. Thus, when Speke arrived at a certain village, the natives shut their doors against him, because they had never before seen a white man, nor the tin boxes that the men were carrying. "Who knows," they said, "but that these very boxes are the plundering Watuta transformed and come to kill us? You cannot be admitted. No persuasion could avail with them, and the party had to proceed to the next village. The fear thus entertained